Not yet. Oh, no, that's okay. But not to you. Great, thank you. Good morning. Welcome. What do we got? We got that, okay. Whilst I remembered, have a little list this morning. I was Catholic in my childhood, and one of the really good things that came from that was candles, memorial candles. And so we've had them here for a long time. I don't know whether people know whether you're welcome to, but if you've ever lost anybody in your life and you'd like to light a candle in their honor, they're there every Sunday. You could light one now if you wanted to. I do it every time in memory of Ruth Dennison, this is a picture of us a little while ago when my hair was still brown. So now I had a plan. How do I do it? We're sharing that picture now. I had this. Okay, so I invite you to just settle back, land. Lisa Amador.
All of the people of all of the earth, each with a piece of all this hurt. Some take it in, some give it away, among other things that I can't explain. Childlike wonders that wither and flicker and fade. But when we're together, opening heart, it doesn't matter that all falls apart. When we're together, there lies the art. We'll make it better when it falls apart. Will it always fall apart? All of the people of all of the earth, each with a reason, a heart and a worth. Some devastate when you're in their way and dig themselves deeper in hopes that you stay. Childlike blunders that cover up feeling afraid. But when we're together, wandering soul, we'll build a ladder and climb out of that hole. When we're together, our only goal is to make it better when it all unfolds. For it always does unfold.
affirming. Great. Good to go? Yes. Please. Hello, beautiful human beings. Thank you for coming. Hello, those of you on Zoom. Who's here from Edmonton for the first time? Anyway, welcome. Hello. Hi. Welcome aboard. I did a little 2-hour, hour and a half thing in Edmonton yesterday, which I didn't even have to fly to. I could do Zoom. Well, I'm Robert Beatty, or this is what poses as Robert Beatty for a while here. And I'm really glad you're here. And we're going to diverge from our usual procedure this morning because of a conversation I was having this morning with KB. And I said, why don't you just say that to the group? So she's an actor and director from way back. So
thank you.
For you. Hang on, I'm going to get you the microphone.
Hi, everybody.
Wait. There we go. All right.
Hiya. I was talking with Robert this morning because I come to set up, and we had a little time. And I came to a realization this past week. I have been coming here for
A lifetime.
6 years, and I am obviously his worst nightmare. He had to pull me, drag, kicking and screaming.
She was hard.
Yeah, I'm an intense and high-strung person who functions on anxiety. But what I have noticed lately, I had started joining the morning sits, which means I'm sitting 5 to 6 days a week for the past 4 months or so. And I just realized that I really never understood what mental health was before. You know, I always thought it was kind of a, mental health, right? It's something you kind of pass through on your way to A to Z. And I mean, physical health you can measure, right? You can't measure mental health as easily. But I just realized that I have really gained more actual mental health. I don't swing as far. I'm able to catch myself when I react unnecessarily, where I used to just react. It's part of what you're trained to do as an actor. Don't think, react, right? And also, it's harder to get me off balance. It's like my feet are on the ground a little more strongly. And so Robert asked me to tell you that can happen, and it certainly has for me, and it's been a surprise.
Thank you, KB. Okay. What's that? Oh, I wanted the people back. Yeah, okay. Remove spotlight. I want to thank the donor who gave us our new TV. I was very reticent to get the first one, the postage stamp up here. But I've discovered how incredibly helpful it can be, especially when we're doing as much hybrid teaching as we do here. And Paul is working on the project of getting our tech stuff together, getting bids and so on. And blessedly for that, we already have a $4,000 donation promised and another 1,000. So we'd probably be able to just pay for it. But if we don't, we'll come to you and say, throw in a few bucks and we'll have a really nice system. It works, but it's always a little rickety. It's like, are we going to get across the bridge before it collapses? So anyway, hello to those of you out in the Zoom. Oh, I see people haven't seen in a while. Nice. Hi, Nicole and Tom and Jai. Wonderful. Okay. Whatever shall we do here? Maybe we might just pause. There's an image, I forget what book I got it out of. If you take a glass of water and you put mud in it and you stir it up, you can't see through it at all. If you let it sit for half an hour, a day, it tends to get really clear. And the same is true with human consciousness. If we stop if we stop trying to get satisfied through the consolation prizes of life, we actually discover that we get to just be here, and it's pretty nice. So I invite you, in the tradition of the Buddha, from 2,600 years ago, down through all these generations, why not park? Park. Sit comfortably upright. And notice that you are alive. You are life. You are the living earth. In the 14.2 billion year lifespan so far of the universe, of our universe, and the 4.2 billion years of the earth being here, you're alive. You are the cambium layer. You are where consciousness exists. And most mysteriously, inexplicably, with your body comes consciousness. And that consciousness can contain worries, anxieties, hatred, fear, jealousy, loneliness, despair. And it can also manifest love and compassion and kindness, generosity, wisdom. And the Buddha, in his brilliance, and I like to say the Buddha was an ordinary human being, just like us. But he discovered that he could kind of like garden his mind. The word in Sanskrit is bhavana, to cultivate the mind. That we can cultivate our heart mind in such a way that we actually increase our happiness profoundly and decrease our suffering. And it doesn't require that we believe something or follow some guru or give away our power. It doesn't mean we have to go into some kind of altered state. The altered state is being awake. So we sit here, and there's some very traditional things we can do. One is notice that your body's breathing, and then pay attention. Pay attention to the sensations of in-breathing and out-breathing. And any moment that awareness is with in-breathing and out-breathing, you're not in the past, you're not in the future. You're right here. You are living in the present moment. And each breath, you can notice, has a beginning. It has a rising to fullness, a decline, and then a vanishing. And you don't need to control it. You're not trying to do some special kind of breathing. You're doing the breathing that your body did that first gasp when your mother couldn't breathe for you anymore. And it breathes in until it's full, and then it breathes out. It's quite likely that the mind wanders. That's kind of its job. It'll wander into the past, into the future, into fantasies, into the story, which is the self, the story of the self. But please, please do not make an enemy of the wandering mind. To make an enemy of the wandering mind is a fool's errand. Instead, how do we allow loving awareness to include the mind, the thoughts, the memories, the plans? We can't actually make that waking up moment happen, but it does happen. You'll notice that the mind has wandered off somewhere, and maybe it's been there for 5 minutes. Maybe a whole lifetime has come and gone, plans and worries and hopes and fears. And then there's awareness. Oh, the mind is wandering. That is a moment of freedom. That is the path to the end of suffering. Wake up. You may discover that there's some control of the breath, some holding of the breath, some lack of ease in breathing. That's pretty normal too. You can just observe that, or anytime you like, you can change and pay attention to hearing instead. This voice comes and goes. Sounds come and go. in this practice of being awake, you can notice pretty easily what's the quality of mind that's present. Is it a mind that rests easily on the breath and stays calm? Or is it restless and agitated? Is it worried? Does it get lost in the stories of the self, the trance states? Is it colored by wanting, craving, desiring? I want some, even I want a better, quote, meditation. Is it caught up in disliking something? Pushing away? I don't like this experience or that experience. Is it kind of thick and heavy and sleepy and dull? Is it doubting? Why did I come here? What is this? Is it anxious? Depressed? Lonely? This capacity of mindfulness to create an object of these experiences, to observe them, to witness them, each time is a step toward freedom. Because you're not the wandering mind. You're not the anxiety or the fear. You're none of the stories that the mind tells. What are you then? So please come home ever so gently to in-breathing and out-breathing. Notice the in-breathing and out-breathing. Let yourself settle. Mindfulness comes with a certain quality of kindness and love. And it's the kind of love which means there's room for everything. So no matter what's happening internally or externally for that matter, you can pay attention. You can notice the breath coming and going. You can notice thoughts arising and passing away. You could notice pain if it comes up in your body, or pleasure. Emotions can sometimes appear. You might feel sad or happy or lonely or angry or just kind of confused and dull. All of these are welcome. And for stability, you can come home to breathing anytime and notice the mystery of how each breath begins, rises to fullness, declines, and vanishes. For many or most people, it's a little odd to stop and do this. We're so conditioned and trained to be going somewhere, to be achieving something, to being worthwhile, to being lovable. What we tend not to notice is we complete this project and we're still hungry, so we start the next one. And 50 projects later, we're still looking for something. And so here it is. Your life is right here. You are right here. Your legs are alive. Your buttocks and thighs, where they press against the chair, are alive. Your hands and fingers are alive. Your chest and sides and back that move with the breath are life. Those fingers, so full of life. Awareness meets that life. It's pretty common for physical discomfort to become more prominent as we sit. And one of the skills we learn is how to stay with that discomfort without moving unless it's injuring us. But we learn ultimately to bear that which is unbearable. And this is the setting ourselves free from addiction. We learn to bear what is. And as we come closer to the end of the time sitting, let's try a different strategy. And that is to say some very simple words, familiar words. I love you. And put your name at the end. I love you. And if some aspect of what you think of as yourself arises and says, nope, I don't like this, say I love you to that. I accept you. I love you. And you can imagine yourself at any age. You could imagine yourself as a newborn baby, or a toddler, or a 5-year-old, or a teenager. My goodness, didn't you need someone to say I love you when you were a teenager? And this, again, is not, we don't work at this. It's not like we're going to condition this in, kind of beat it into ourselves, I love you. Instead, it's acknowledging that, of course, you do love yourself. Whenever you get perspective on your vulnerable human being, we're nothing but lovable. I love you, with your name at the end. And you sit in a room or here on Zoom in your own home in a group. There's about 100 of us. Every single person in this group suffers a lot. They're anxious, they worry about money, or they struggle in their relationship, or their health is not good, or they're taking care of someone who's very sick, maybe very sick and not appreciative. They worry about things like climate change and war and their children. They're normal people. Why not think a kind thought for them? Doesn't need to be some super duper thought. It's just, gosh, I hope you can rest sometimes. I hope you rest in loving yourself, or whatever it is for you, whatever you'd wish for yourself. But there's all kinds of fancy things we could do. We could imagine that our skin is golden and radiant and sending this throughout the room or throughout the Zoom call. Or we can just realize, I really do wish everyone well. It's so easy, so natural. And please now be invited to notice your buttocks where they press into the chair, the cushion, the floor. Notice the life in your hands, the life in your face, the life in your eyes. And then form the intention to open your eyes. Notice that though, before you do it, notice it takes a plan. Form an intention to open your eyes. And then, how do you make that happen? How do you operationalize that? How do you do it? And let that happen. Letting your eyes open, being mindful of the eyes opening. And something pretty special happens. Seeing happens. Seeing. Be aware of seeing. 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 And to the degree that it feels safe, take a moment to turn around, look around. Carry that wish. Remember, here's the real clincher. You ready? I taught in Edmonton yesterday, I mentioned, and I asked my friend there, is it okay if I'm bold? Can I just go for it? And I started my teaching by saying, look around. Everyone in this room is going to die. Try it. Look around. Every single person. They're all going to say goodbye to everybody and everything. We don't like to think that thought, but it's true. Doesn't it open your heart? If you get beyond the fear, and it's like, whoa. I mean, and that's true for all 8 billion of us. It's true for the people who are being oppressed, and it's true for the people who are caught in being oppressors. It's true for the super wealthy who don't know what the hell they're doing. They're so confused. I have a friend who works with the super wealthy, and he says they worry about money. I mean, is that not weird? All over the world, there's hospitals full of people. There's babies being born. This is really quite a trip we're on. And doesn't it make sense to love each other? To love ourselves to begin with. And fortunately, the technology is not, well, it's a grand technology, but it's not complicated because it happens with the mind. I just remembered. Did any of you ever hear Reverend Ike? One, yeah. I'm going to find it and play a bit for you someday. Reverend Ike was this, I think he was black, must have been. And one of the lines I remember from him, he's a great preacher. And he said, whenever you are thinking in your mind, you be careful what your mind says, because your mind is God's voice to you. So how about when you're thinking those negative self-thoughts? It's probably not wise to continue. And I thought of a poem during the meditation I want to share with you. This is one it's been in my quiver for a long time. It's old, 14th century, 15th century. Shoot. Oh yeah, there it is. It's from a man named Kabir. The small ruby that everyone wants. The small ruby that everyone wants has fallen out on the road. Some people say it lies to the east of us. Others say to the west of us. Some say in deep waters, and others say in primitive earth rocks. Kabir's instinct told him it was inside and what it was worth. So he wrapped it carefully in his heart cloth. Is that not beautiful? The small ruby that everyone wants has fallen out in the road. Some people say it lies to the east of us. Others say to the west. Some say it lies in fancy vacations, big bank accounts, children, gated communities, having control of the oil fields. Costco card, great sex, good music, concerts, skiing. Primitive earth rocks. Kabir's instinct told him that it was inside and what it was worth. So he wrapped it carefully in his heart cloth. I made a few notes that I wanted to be sure to mention on my iPad, and for the life of me, they disappeared. Oh, no, note. Oh well, I'll do my best. Tonight, 6:30, Candle Summers, one of our teachers here, is teaching insight and loving kindness class. There also is, I don't know what weekend Be Queer Now is on. It's on Sunday nights. There's a whole lot happening here at PIMC. And I invite you to go to the website, which is gorgeous and very clear and easy to use now, and see about the other teachers that are teaching. And yeah. And part of my responsibility has to do with this was my monk's bowl in Burma a long time ago. And it's a symbol. It's a symbol that you can use this bowl or that wood box back there or your clicker online to support PIMC, to do something with some of your discretionary income. that you can do really a lot of good in the world with. I'm in a very privileged position in many ways, but one of the privileges is that I, over the years, have had hundreds of people tell me about how this place changed their life, or how the Dharma changed their life. I paused there for a second because this morning early, if you ever want to come and just sit for an hour before we start, the doors are open at 9 and you can come and sit. And also, I'm going to get this together. The first Sunday of the month, starting within a month, we're going to do an introduction for newcomers at 9 o'clock on the first Sunday. I did it for years and we just never got it back together after COVID. But I had one of those experiences with a man that was here. It'd been 10, he said, there's something I've been meaning to tell you for 10 years. And it was about his life being transformed. Life being transformed. That's quite a thing to say. Let me see what else. In the backyard, there are 25, maybe 30 little logs about this long. Trees, branches fell down. And I brought my chainsaw one afternoon this week and I loved it. I got the chainsaw in the backyard. And so, is there anyone here who would like some firewood? Very green. Not immediately. In which, would you like it? Do you have a way to transport it? You could fill the back of your Prius. Oh yeah, you'll fit it in the Prius, that much. So after we're finished, maybe you would bring your Prius around to the front. And are there 2 or 3 people who would help carry a few pieces of wood? No one leaves the room until we get at least 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. And then there's brush there as well. Just pile that up and we'll figure out what to do with that after. Okay, we got rid of that. Good. There was something else. Next thing we're going to do is Jim is going to lead some mindful movement. And then I'm going to come back and I'm so tickled to have this screen because some people really like diagrams and they remember things because of the visuals. And I have a bunch of really incredible slides of the Eightfold Path, of the Buddha's path to freedom. And I'm going to start at the ground floor today with the First Noble Truth, the 4 Noble Truths, actually. And it's a cognitive, it's a model of how we can, in fact, first off, recognize I'm suffering. Now I'll just give you a little teaser. That is not so easy because we have so many ways to deny what's really going on in our lives. Or I think I'll just overwork, which is when I still do too much. I think I'll just overwork or else stay. And we avoid stopping to realize, oh gosh, I'm actually suffering. But then when we discover that, there's the whole path. It's like you get a good medical diagnosis, all of a sudden you know the treatment plan. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And have I forgotten anything huge? No. I did. Oh, you want it? No? Okay. I hope you all feel welcome. We have a beautiful welcome statement that I didn't think to bring in, but there's so many ways we've been injured, and there's so many ways we create enemies and in-groups and out-groups. And our hope is that anybody of any minority or skin color or sexual preference or one of my colleagues, Joseph Goldstein, a giant in the field, we were talking, I was part of a group We were talking about political stances. No, it makes me quite teary. And there are a lot of stances we could take. I have a particular one, which is the climate's changing. And I can get, it's like, pay attention. But that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is finding the way home, finding the way to peace for ourselves. And then maybe we'll be activists, and some of us probably need to be. But the thing that Joseph said was, I want my teaching to be available to Democrats and Republicans. I don't want someone to not come because I'm taking a stand on this, because there's always someone on the other side. And the fact is, everybody on every side, everybody on every side of every issue is suffering the same way. We all got born. We're all trying to have a good time. And our children are getting sick, and our financial system changes. And it's true for everybody. So part of our aspiration here is, how do we make everyone feel welcome? And we can't make everyone feel welcome, because it's not really up to, I can't make anybody feel well. I can be welcoming and I can be kind and so on, but someone could walk in the door and do, no doubt. And it's like, oh God. I mean, one of the classic modern ones is, oh God, a white-haired old man. There's no way I want to listen to this. And they don't, and it could be anything. We're all so prejudiced and frightened. So our aspiration is to be as welcome as we can. Best we can do, I think. That's pretty good. Well, I need to stop. Mr. Dalton, do you think you could take over the helm here for a few minutes? I haven't introduced you properly for a long time. This is Feng Lo Shui from Sichuan province in China to teach you some Qigong. I could be pilloried for that. It's like I clearly wasn't showing respect for the Chinese.
The first time Robert introduced me as Li Po, I looked it up. And, and sure enough, Li Po was a heavy drinker that wandered the woods and tacked up little poems on trees. So I'm possibly a reincarnation of that. Okay. I have a spot to stand in. This is my spot. And mindful movement is what we're about. And Robert talked a lot about all the division in our world today, where everybody's making artificial, not everybody, a lot of people are constantly making walls between people. But there's one process which we learned from the Qigong masters hundreds and thousands of years ago. And that's when we bring loving awareness to our own center in a group, and we follow the leader, that simple game from childhood. When we resonate with the leader, we create a wave of healing. And it's It's easy. It doesn't take any effort, really. It's effortless effort to be loving awareness, be loving awareness, and focus on the movement of the room, because we're swimming in a ocean of chi. And the waves we're making in this ocean are healing. So loving awareness is our gift to ourselves, and it's the gift that keeps on giving to everyone who's watching on Zoom and moving, everybody in the room. And there's a whole tradition of Qigong masters that go back thousands of years, and they're right with us, allowing a flow of healing energy, loving, flowing, healing energy. Can you feel how everyone is imitating everyone else? Naturally. It's how we learn everything. Is creating perceptions in our nervous system to match what we see and hear. There's no division in this room, except for this. I can't see anybody over there. Now turn one palm inward toward you and another palm towards the earth. And as we move our bodies, who are representing the unity of heaven and earth, there's a cloud above and a shadow below, and they're in unison. And then we come to close, trying to bring all this loving awareness into this moment, into this moment. Practicing generosity, being kind to ourselves and kind to our sanganistas. Thank you, Had, wherever you are.
Mhm. Mhm. Hmm. Okay. How did little Bobby Beatty from Lachine, Quebec, wind up sitting here? That's a very weird thing. How did you wind up sitting here too? Why are you here? Sunday morning? For about 20 years, I studied with a man named Matt Flickstein. I may again. He wrote this 3-page, 2-page little piece. I'm going to read the first paragraph. It's called Living from a Non-Dual Perspective. I will also, oh, it's already there. I'll put it up again. I will put it on my blog. If you go to robertbeatty.com/blog, I'll put it there this afternoon. Living from a non-dual perspective. Everything that arises disappears. Whatever is born dies. Nothing escapes the cycle of birth and death. It is important for us to directly and experientially realize that there is never a point in time when something exists and is not in the process of becoming something other than it was just a moment before. All suffering comes from clinging, trying to hold on to that which is perpetually changing, and all clinging comes from delusion. We must learn to live in the clarity and space of non-clinging, neither grasping nor pushing anything away. The key is just to be present with what arises from moment to moment, with neither holding nor resisting. At the same time, it is essential not to fall into the trap of denying the relative existence of our psychophysical organism and the world of experience it presents. Just a bit of the next paragraph. Compassion is the willingness to play in the field of dreams, even though you are awake. Approach life with joy, enthusiasm, love, and an open heart. Take delight in the manifestations of life. It is all a play of consciousness, and it really is play. If something appears serious or burdensome, even death, then we are lost in delusion. So, all suffering comes from clinging. It's interesting. I can't quite find the doorway in to what I want to say. I could certainly splatter information. Well, I think I'm going to do this. Oh, yeah, this. Share. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Now, I could overwhelm you with information in a few minutes. I'm going to try not to. How many of you know the Eightfold Path well enough to say them? A few, okay. I'm going to come back to that. There are these, there's a way of living which the Buddha taught. which is all about, he said, the taste of this practice in the beginning is the taste of freedom. The taste in the middle is the taste of freedom, and the taste at the end is the taste of freedom. And the paradigm is essentially wake up enough from our denial and our ignorance to realize that we're suffering, and then do what we need to do in order to set ourselves free, in order to become more loving and more kind and generous, and to live well and to die well. And in the briefest of terms, we really need to look at our worldview. What are the deep beliefs that I hold? What do I believe is going to make me happy? And we've all been fed millions and millions of times that what will make us happy is success, money, power. Right? The material, the great materialist dream. And so what are the alternatives? Well, I could aspire, instead of money, wealth, power, to become loving, wise, and compassionate. And if I did that, then I'd be paying attention to, well, what thoughts is this mind generating? Are they going to lead to kindness and connection and compassion, or are they going to lead somewhere else? And then from there, well, if I want to be happy in the long run, I need to get along with people. And so we start looking at the precepts, the moral and ethical code of speaking skillfully and using our sexuality wisely and so on. So then, and also my livelihood, how do I make my living? I want my living, my work to be supportive of my spiritual practice. And then it goes into the meditation side of things, which is we can make skillful efforts. And what are the efforts? The efforts are always in the mind to restrain unwholesome states. To, if let's say you're worrying and full of anger or whatever, we work to restrain that, not to deny it, but we learn skillful ways to metabolize it so that we don't have to live there all the time. To bring into being wholesome states like mindfulness, like compassion, like generosity. And then to be mindful, to learn how to participate in the waking up that's possible, which sets us free from suffering. And then concentration, which is the mind's ability to focus on one object at a time and stay there. And if we don't develop some capacity to choose what mind states we stay in, we're lost. Right? If we can't decide, I'm angry about that, I want to process this anger, but I don't want to stay angry at that person. In fact, I worked for several years in drug and alcohol treatment, residential treatment, teaching meditation. And very soon in the residential treatment process, there's a great emphasis on resentment, because resentment causes relapses. And a truth is, any resentment that you cherish locks you from freedom, locks us from freedom, even small ones. Eventually, we have to forgive everybody and everything if we want to be free. So, what if we wanted to explore wise understanding? Click. Did that change did that change for them? Okay, great. Phew, it's working. This is the first step of the Eightfold Path, wise understanding. And there's the Four Noble Truths, which is where I want to go soon. The three characteristics of existence, which I could talk for a week on them, but what's common in our experience? What's common on this side of the Big Bang? Anicca. Nothing is stable. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. How many advanced civilizations do you suppose have come and gone in 14.2 billion years around this universe? I mean, there are tens of thousands of habitable planets, and civilizations have come and gone. Anybody here had a relationship dissolve underneath you? They're unstable. Anicca dukkha means that life is hard. There's suffering. And anatta, which is the real core beautiful thing about the Buddhist teachings that's utterly misunderstood. Anatta means no soul. Which of course sticks in the craw for most of us, because many of us were raised with a notion of a soul. And just a little teaser with that. Imagine if you could realize that you have nothing to defend. You don't even have a soul to defend. What if we could realize, oh, I am everything? It's quite a relief. Even just the thought of it. And then there's the law of karma and the aggregates, which I'm not going to go into at all. But now to the Four Noble Truths, where I was hoping to come to today. All right, here we are. This software, incidentally, is called, what's it called? I forget. I'll remember. So, if you were to turn around here in the room, I invite you, look back on that wall and you'll see there's a beautiful piece of fabric. And there's the Buddha sitting with 5 monks. That's a drawing, or not a drawing, that's a representation of what I'm about to say. It's the first thing the Buddha taught. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? The most important thing he thought to teach he and these 5 friends were practicing, and they were trying to find their way to freedom. And he'd fasted himself almost to death, and a young woman brought him some food, and they abandoned him because he's eating again and consorting with women. And anyway, he then figured out how, and he broke through and woke up, and then he went to find his 5 friends. And what I'm going to do my best to share with you today is what he told them. And I think this is the most important discovery in the world. Fire was important. I wouldn't be here without antibiotics. There's a lot of things that have been very important. But imagine having an understanding of how I'm suffering and also how I can stop suffering or reduce my suffering. And we could phrase it differently. How can we become more loving? How can we become kinder to ourselves and others? And one of the things we can do is to learn how to take care of ourselves, to take care of our own pain, so that we can actually be there for other people. On this very stage, Joanna Macy, marvelous, amazing teacher of our time, kind of pleaded with us. She said, please, please, please do your grief work. Face the difficult parts of your life, because otherwise, when the hard times come, you will turn on your loved ones. Right? So this is that. Turn inwards, face what you're running from. And then when your partner or child comes and says, I need your help, you'll actually be able to be with them, because you won't resonate with their pain and be unable to be present. So, the first ennobling truth: there is suffering. Any of you read Scott Peck's, what's it called? The Road Less Traveled? Remember the first line? Life is difficult. And while I'm a great believer in psychotherapy and separating from our parents and so on, even if you had the best parents in the world, it was still hard. There's no singular cause except birth. Why? Well, because everything's changing. So dukkha, and am I doing this right? Yes. I'm going to zoom in here. Birth. On Wednesdays, I arrive at 7:45 and I'm there till 2:30 in the afternoon, and I get to be with my granddaughter. She's 7 months old. I was with her 3 nights ago with my friend Larry, and she was having a hard time that night. She cried for at least an hour unconsolably. And Larry is he's a consummate psychotherapist and really understands child development. And I was holding her, and she was screaming. And I'd done everything I knew to do, and I've been around babies a bunch. Something was not okay. Larry was thinking, I wonder if this is acid reflux. And I said this to the parents, and David, the father, said, nope, it was 8 o'clock. She's doing that at 8 o'clock every night now. But here I was very calm, and I'd done everything I knew, and I had my consultant, and I really have done everything I can. And to just watch her, she was suffering so much. She has no ego. She has no capacity to abstract and to realize, oh, this is pain. And she was just inchoate suffering. This is a picture of a baby from a previous marriage of mine, not one of mine, she would be a niece, I guess. Birth. Birth is hard. And check this out. Close that. Is that what I do? Oops. Oh, here we are. You entered the world that way, or you were rescued with a C-section, one or the other. I've been present at 2 human births, one, quote, natural childbirth and one C-section. It's pretty heavy. And lots of babies don't make it. Right? Lots of babies don't make it past the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 3 months. And it's a big deal. I've been counseling psychotherapy for all this time. And when your baby dies early, people don't think to say, I'm so sorry you lost your baby. Or you don't even tell people. But it's huge. So birth is suffering. And then, how do I do this? I do this, yes, okay. Sickness. Sickness. Sickness is not an accident. It's not because we've done something wrong or we didn't eat our Wheaties or we should have done our yoga. Sickness is normal for humans. And there's always new ones coming along. There always have been. There will be another COVID. Bill Gates, bless his heart, the greatest philanthropist ever known in terms of amount. He has $3 billion figuring out how we deal with the next pandemic. Because we know it's coming. And it may be much worse than COVID. So sickness, we're all going to get sick. How many of you know someone who's really sick right now? Yeah. How many of you know someone who's dying right now? Yeah. Happens all the time, right? 150,000 people a day die on the earth, average day. Problematically, 175,000 babies are born. There's 25,000 more of us every day. It's posing a problem. Sickness, old age. Any of you recognize Rodin? Beautiful, amazing thing. Old age, decay, a little humor. I didn't pay much attention to decay until I started getting older. And in my 60s, all my teeth went. That was wild. And I take eight pharmaceutical medications to keep this thing going. And it's not because I'm not a good meditator. It's because meditation has nothing to do with many systems in the body. It's just they wear out. By the time you get to be 76, you're way past your pull date. And we're holding it together with chemistry. And then decay, and then death. This was Jennifer's grandfather, military man. Death. Birth, sickness, old age, decay, death. This is our normal. We all will have these opportunities for suffering. But that's not the whole picture, because dukkha. Come back. Go down here. Now, these are some very interesting categories. Have you today had any experiences you didn't like? How many would you suppose? 50, 100, 10? I am addicted to coffee. Why? I don't like that kind of feeling I get up with in the morning. And of course, I make it worse by drinking the coffee, but that's the way it is. Now, that's a very small suffering, but there's lots of things that we experience that we don't want to experience. And it's not going to go away, right? That's the structure of life. How about not having desired experiences? I talked to a couple yesterday. They're very prominent musicians on the Portland scene, and they were talking about COVID. They had a tour, a Europe tour, a North American tour, and someplace else planned, and they were just about to take off on it when COVID hit, and the whole thing disappeared. And they talked about that. And then he's had a couple of surgeries since then. There's lots of pleasant experiences one wants and lots of unpleasant experiences one doesn't want. And then there's another category. How about this one? Being with people we don't want to be with. How about being employed with someone you don't want to be with, or being married to someone you don't want to be with? Or being with a child, an adult child, who is addicted and prone to violence and wants to live with you. Being with people we don't want to be with, perhaps politically. People one doesn't want to be in power over one, but doesn't have you don't have a choice. So there's a lot of potential for suffering there, isn't there? And what about this one? This is such a huge one. It's it's almost the entirety of country music, which I like. One of my heroes, a man named Achan Semedo, the elder Western Thai forest monk. He's in his late 80s now. Marvelous. Sumedho. Look him up on YouTube. He's such a remarkable human being. He speaks, he's funny. He speaks, and he's clearly not selling anything. He's just, here's how it is, folks. Here's how it is, folks. Anyway, not being with the beloved. Ever experienced that? Today? Not just, I want to be with this person, but whoa, I spent 3 decades with this person and they are gone. I just had a flashback to my early development resulted in profound codependency and desperate need. And my first true love, a girl at that point, I guess a young woman named Olenka. I was so clingy. And I was in Montreal, and she moved about 120 miles away, which was an insurmountable distance. And we'd been together daily for months. She never wrote. She ghosted me. And with good reason, because I was so clingy. But she ghosted me. And I remember I would call home, and my poor mother, I'd call home from college, and she'd say, I'm sorry, there's no mail. And I would sob in the phone booth. Now that's not being with the beloved. She came back for graduation. This was bizarre. She came back for graduation. We tried to be a couple, right? And the couple we were with in the front seat were busy making out, and we're in the back seat sitting on opposite sides, not even talking. We didn't know what to do. Completely paralyzed. That was bad. And I'm sure if you think about your life, things like that have happened. Especially when we're young, we have so few tools. Okay, isn't that uplifting teaching? Birth, sickness, old age, decay, death, not getting what you want, getting what you don't want. So let's go back into definitions for a moment. I love the way the computer's working. Thank you. Many things in life are difficult to bear. Sitting still, even being hungry. There are misfortunes, sadness, distress, and anguish. There's ongoing dissatisfaction. And Ruth Denison used to say this, darling, there's always a leak in the canoe. No matter what, right? You're finally getting what you really want, and you're worried that you're not going to get it for long enough. So, is this a recognizable experience, this suffering? And what the Buddha would ask people when they came to him, and they came with all kinds of questions, all kinds of philosophical questions, he would ask them, are you suffering? And then he would help them figure out if they were suffering. Are you suffering? And then what are you suffering with? And then that's the beginning of the path. And so with this first noble truth, here we are. This one is the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. There's 3 levels of insight. The first we're getting at here in this talk, because I'm creating for you or helping you create a cognitive model that, is it really true that I'm suffering? And so is everybody else suffering. That's the first insight. The second insight is it starts to become real, and you realize, whoa, this is kind of true. And that gets your interest up. And then over time, you become really masterful at turning toward what's hurting and discovering that there's suffering in it. It's in a way, it's called growing up. Realizing I really am hurting. One of the ways that I avoided, I've been teaching this since my mid-20s, and I didn't get it. In my 20s, I didn't really understand dukkha, because I always knew that someday I was going to be with the perfect person, or I was going to meditate and get enlightened, and then there'd be nothing hard anymore. Everything would be easy. And there were these cognitive, ego-saving defenses that I never could, and I still don't, of course. I never could really turn toward the real angst. But we learn to do that more and more, and that's the third insight. Now, if I stopped here, it would be bad, right? It's like, well, you're born, you live a life, and it's damn hard, and then you die, right? So let's just get it over with. But the Buddha discovered there's a cause of the suffering. And the cause isn't really these things. The cause is clinging. The cause is I'm having an unpleasant experience. I don't want to be having an unpleasant experience, right? My back is hurting, which my back is always hurting. I have chronic pain in my low back, and I think I may get a surgery that may help, right? I'm still wanting to get rid of that. What the Buddha discovered is this second great truth, which is that the suffering isn't in the pain. The suffering is in the relationship to the pain. And the second noble truth is called Vedana, or feeling. And what we can do is we can become investigators. We can become superb scientists. And when you're suffering, you start noticing, why am I suffering? Well, it's always because I don't accept what's happening. If there's not pleasure happening, I want pleasure. If there's discomfort or pain happening, something unpleasant, I want to get rid of it. Or if things are pretty neutral, I'm not going to pay much attention. So there's something that happens for some people, very fortunate people like you, that you get curious. And a first big insight for me happened on my first meditation retreat in India back in '71. In brief, I was sitting in meditation cross-legged that my body never liked, really wasn't wise even, but my right knee was hurting like hell. I mean, really hurting and screaming, but I wanted to follow the rules, and we were doing these vow sittings. I'll sit for an hour no matter what happens. And I'd wind up crying and, oh, my knee hurts. And I got these teachings from the man named Goenka. And he said, take your awareness into the pain and go deeper and deeper into the pain and see what happens. And you go toward the pain and the mind is freaking out and you get lost in fantasies and fears and stories. But then after a couple or 3 days, something happened where I took awareness and went in there and I noticed all the defenses. And then 1 second to the next, all the suffering went away. The pain was the same. The signals getting to the brain were the same. But the craving, the demand for it to be different, stopped. The Buddha called that nirvana. And nirvana isn't another planet. It isn't, it isn't a whiny band from Seattle that my son was really into. It's this mysterious thing that human consciousness is capable of, which is it stops fighting reality, and reality is as it is. And then 5 seconds later, the suffering was back. And I was like, what happened? And I didn't understand. But here we are 52 years later, and the same process happens all the time. There's suffering. With meditative capacity, one turns toward it and one suffers it consciously. And this doesn't mean one doesn't do everything one can to relieve suffering. It doesn't mean you don't put your life on the line, perhaps, to help relieve other people's suffering. But when you've done what you can to not suffer anymore, and you're a meditator, you turn toward it and you suffer consciously. You suffer on purpose, or you're present with the suffering on purpose. And you develop the capacity to be with this suffering And a good translation for nirvana is quenching. And I've threatened for years to do this. I went to a blacksmith once and he said it was too complicated. But imagine this. There's a hand and there's a cauldron of cold water. You can see just the ring. And there's a hand, and then from the hand there comes a wrought iron post. And on the top is a 2-inch in diameter, white hot ball. And maybe there's nice music, I don't know. And then the hand starts to go like this, and the white hot ball gets closer and closer and closer to the water. And then before it gets to the water, the camera zooms in and you see it's already got the water dancing. And then it hits and all hell breaks loose. And you can't really see the ball anymore because the chaos, but the color goes from white to yellow to red to nothing. That's quenching. And that's what the Buddha taught we're capable of. And what we can discover very quickly, actually, that we're not stuck with the level of suffering that we have in our lives. We actually can do something. It's very unusual. It doesn't have to do with believing. It sort of has to do with believing it's worth trying, but it's not like there's a doctrine that you have to believe or that you have to worship the Buddha or something like that. The Buddha was very clear upon his death. He said, don't make statues of me. Practice. So, the next time you're suffering, pause. It can even be you're stuck in traffic and you've got an important meeting to be at and the restlessness is just coming up and you're suffering. Pause. Pay attention. So there's suffering here. Why am I suffering? I have an unenforceable rule that this shouldn't be happening. Right? It's happening. Next time you have a toothache. Next time, the next time a person you live with says something, it could be benign on their end, but it gets you and you're suddenly into your stuff. Pause. Watch what the thinking is doing. Pay attention and ask yourself, what's my unenforceable rule? Well, they shouldn't treat me like that. Or why don't they appreciate me more? Look at all the good things I do. Or, but you start watching your own internal experience and you begin to get some agency how to stop suffering. Because it's all happening in your mind. It's yours. You have ownership of it. So, craving, thirst, Vedana. Another thing to do. Watch this. Thank you, Gibby. Cold. A little unpleasant anticipation, but thirst. So here it comes. Thirst, unpleasant. Green tea. Not great green tea, but green tea. And all day long, liking and disliking, liking and disliking. You can take that as your meditation object for the day. From now till tonight, notice how many times something is pleasant or unpleasant. And notice the liking or disliking. That's where the suffering comes in. It's from the liking and disliking. So I want to just zoom in on these. Vedana, this craving, thirst, tanha, grasping, that's the second noble truth. And it's called Vedana in Pali language. And then it's because there are pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral experiences. And this is what, this is pleasant and greed, wanting. And this is not good. The picture isn't good because he looks more like he's raging as opposed to not wanting, but it was the best I could find. And how do I respond to unpleasant experiences? Well, I want them not. And how do I respond to pleasant? I want it. And the neutral, I'm kind of not decided and I don't pay much attention, which can get me into a lot of trouble because that can switch in a moment. All right, how am I doing? Oh, shoot. It went fast. Now, I've talked about this already, nirvana, nibbana, quenching, extinguishing. As soon as there is deep acceptance of the circumstance, the suffering's gone and we're free. We don't have to be manipulating the world around us or our loved ones to give me what I want. We realize, oh, that's not happening. It leads to freedom and it eliminates attachments. So, how am I going to operationalize that? This is a path. It's actually a path out at the Trappist Abbey in Lafayette, the monastery. There's a path. There's a very highly articulated model of how we go about learning about these Four Noble Truths. And how do I get back to the... Oh, here we go. Back to here. So there's these four truths. The truth of dukkha, the truth of craving, of wanting, which is the cause of the suffering, interestingly, and the truth of sweet relief, and the path. Now, this could sound pretty highfalutin, right? Maybe someday, but before today is over, something's going to happen that you will be unhappy with. And you'll be suffering with that unhappiness. You could simply be aware of that suffering and maybe for a moment stop blaming the world or the person and realize, well, this is suffering in me and I have ownership of it. What's my unenforceable rule? And then be with it. This is how we learn to modulate our emotions. It's how we learn how to modulate our behavior, how we learn to improve our relationships. In fact, I believe this is the most powerful thing we can possibly do for world peace, which is to become peace. And then the relationship, the people that we bump into are affected by our peacefulness. Doesn't mean we can't be an activist in various different ways, but this is the foundation. I'm teaching a class here on this lovely book about Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And one of the things I find myself going back to again and again in the classes is these two men. The Dalai Lama spends 5 hours a day in meditation. Desmond Tutu spends 4 hours a day in prayer. Why? Well, they know that's what it takes for them to keep a stable consciousness. Now, we're not likely to do that, but you could take half an hour a day, which will change your life radically. If you were to meditate for 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks, skip a day each week, I bet you someone in your life will say, what are you doing? How you're so different, right? You used to snap at the kids all the time and you're not. What are you doing? Because this is a profound intervention. I'm very grateful for antibiotics in my life. And a couple of times that they've been life-saving. And anyway, the whole story about when they first created penicillin, they captured people's urine when they were done with it, they captured it and they purified it again to give it to the next person because it radically changed their biology, right? It killed those little bacteria. Mindfulness is a similar intervention. It gets into consciousness, and once it gets its little feet planted somewhere, you're not going to get it off. Because it notices, oh, look at that thought. Look at the way the way that person looks, and I'm having this experience. Isn't that interesting? Or your spouse or a friend says, we need to talk. And you watch that experience, but then you're able to get a little space around it. This is hugely powerful, as KB shared at the very beginning. You can change your life. And then over time, what happens is instead of I have to meditate, it starts being, I get 20 minutes now, or I get an hour. Imagine the riches I have. I can go somewhere and do nothing for an hour and watch how my consciousness drops out of suffering into ease. And that then, of course, is affecting every physical system in your body and your nervous system. And in fact, you'll be healthier, physically healthier too. So that, is the Four Noble Truths. Now, I wish we had an hour for questions. I would encourage you this, though. Join me and the other teachers in the mornings, 7 o'clock every morning. You can find it by going to robertbeatty.com and find the link, or go to portlandinsight.org and find the link. But do that one morning a week or 2 mornings a week, or plan on going on a retreat, or take a half a day and just go walk in the woods and be aware of walking. But we do have to break out of the trance of production. The trance of I'm a worthy person as long as I'm working. Or maybe if I work hard enough, somebody will finally love me. And drop into, I am an explorer. I'm a consciousness explorer. And it's really part of my job description to stop every day. And maybe to read a nice Buddhist. You could read Robert Beatty's book. There's 2 of them back there. You make a contribution to PIMC when you do it. All right. I'd like to, hang on. I want to do this. Do this. Share. There. I'd like to take a moment to call to the altar of our hearts Ruth Dennison, who was my teacher and friend and great ally in life, my second mother, who I knew for 44 years. And I was present at her death, and who was our great benefactress with this center. Usually I don't, well, why not? Ruth gave us to buy the center. We had to come up with $475,000 in a week. We did. Ruth promised and delivered on 330 of those dollars. When she died, she left us another $250,000. She wasn't a rich person most of her life, but she and Henry bought a house in the Hollywood Hills for $40,000. And it was a house that had a view of the Hollywood sign. And it wasn't a terrific house, but then she sold it when she didn't, when Henry was gone. And then she had this money, and it became this. So that's not the most important part. She really, she was my ally. She was really an ally, teacher, a benefactress. So please take a few moments now. You don't even need to change posture. Think of some teacher or teachers in your life who've helped you. There's been a bunch. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't had powerful teachers. Maybe, like I have my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. McLagan, saved me. Lonely little kid. Who was it for you? Think of them. Think of them, and you can be part of their lineage. and it makes you stronger for the rest of your life. You can always call them to mind or heart, and he's back. That's a woodpecker. Funny, making a hole in the building. So let's close. I think I just want to be where we are. There's a chant. It comes from the Mangala Sutta. Hearing. It's a perfect meditation object. And the words are Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam, Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. And they mean, may all beings receive all blessings. And then sadhu is kind of like the Buddhist amen, or it means well done, or it is well done. So I like to put my hands up like this. You don't have to. And it's not magic. It's just hands. But to put your hands up, I like to put my hands up like this. And then we'll chant it together 3 times. And then we will vanish to the 4 winds. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. There we are, the Portland Tabernacle Singers. Those harmonies are just incredible. So thank you all for being here. I will not be here next week. I think you're in the saddle next Sunday. Sunday? Is it 2 weeks? Maybe I got my dates wrong. Anyway, there will be someone here in this seat to welcome you. And I am grateful that you came. Hello to those of you that are, hello, Allison, that are out there on Zoom. Happy trails. Oh, and don't forget to help, maybe to help with the wood. And I think that's it. Oh, and there's coffee and goodies in the living room. Come on in and have talk to some fine people.